Well, we're on the 4th book in our summer reading list. I'm a voracious reader, and I don't know about you, but I have a stack of books on my nightstand. It never seems to change. So I think, oh, summer reading list, that's a good idea. Maybe I'll get to one of those books on my nightstand, but no, I chose one from the bookshelf that I have moved and moved and moved and moved again. So it's been a long time coming, but we are reading Living Originally by Robert Brumman. And we're going to take a look at his first practice, self-awareness. Yes, spiritual practice, self-awareness. And in the beginning of this book, he defines what transformation is. He says, transformation is a greater awareness of our wholeness. So consider that for a moment. Transformation is a greater awareness of our wholeness. Transformation is not something we acquire. It's not about getting a relationship that works. It's not about getting more wealth. It's not about getting that perfect health. Those are miracles. There's a difference. Transformation is all about a greater awareness and experience of our divinity. He says this: transformation is a radical shift. It is a shift in consciousness. It is a quantum leap. Transformation is an internal and invisible process, but it ultimately impacts the visible and external aspects of our life, our health, our relationships, and our work. We cannot adequately describe the experience of transformation in words. It's different for everyone. But we can describe a path that can lead to transformation. And in this book, which reads a little bit like a graduate level lecture, it's pithy, but it has one powerful invitation, and that's to transformation through these 10 spiritual practices. But all 10 spiritual practices rest on the foundation of these 4 things: self-awareness, self-acceptance, self-trust, and self-appreciation. I love that self-awareness is first, because it invites us into that power that we have called discernment. Discernment is Unity's definition for judgment that's non-judgment. I know that kind of is like, what? So it's Unity's way of saying there's good judgment and there's bad judgment. So the good judgment we call discernment, and that's the activity of noticing. Bad judgment is when we not only notice it, but we walk around telling everybody why. Why? Well, you know, it's bad. It shows where we're attached. You know, we're telling you why we are the way we are. Let me tell you why I'm noticing I am the way I am. It's because, well, you know, you don't understand the life I've had. You don't understand the diagnosis I've had. You don't understand. Whatever you don't understand, just fill in the blank, because we all have a story. It's when we stick to our story and we believe our excuses. So there's really nothing wrong with judgment, good judgment, because it's a noticing. But bad judgment is where we're attached to things. And when we're attached to things, we cannot progress along the path of transformation. A new student of Zen, went to his master and he said, "Master, tell me, what is the most important thing for me to learn?" Well, the master closed his eyes and he paused, and then he said, "Good judgment." Oh, bowed the student. "Thank you so much, master. Thank you so much, master. Tell me, how do I learn good judgment?" The master closes his eyes and he pauses, and then he says, "Bad judgment." Sometimes we have to be stuck before we can get unstuck. Sometimes life just works that way. But when we're stuck in bad judgment, I don't know what your computer does when it gets stuck in a loop or frozen or paralyzed. It's like it's thinking too hard. It's just too attached to whatever it's doing and can't respond to me. I get this little pinwheel. I call it the pinwheel spiral of death. Because sometimes it just goes on and on and on. But it shows me that my computer is stuck. So sometimes in life we get that little pinwheel spiral of death, and here are the million-dollar questions that we can use to notice where we're stuck. In what aspect of your life are you experiencing the pinwheel spiral of death? In what aspect of your life are you mired in bad judgment? In what aspect of your life are you attached to behaviors that are not aligned with your highest and best? In what aspect of your life are you attached to thoughts, attitudes, and beliefs that are not in alignment with your wholeness? And when we notice those and let them go, we are actually creating more space for us to become aware of the core, the essence, the wholeness that we already are. So let me give you an example and share with you what's going on in my own life. 10 years ago, I became, August 1st, I just think that's no coincidence. August 1st, I became the Associate Minister at Unity Church of Hawaii. And then 5 years ago, I became the Senior Minister at Unity of Greater Hartford. And then I moved down here where I was the Senior Minister until August 1st. When I became the co-minister. Now here's what I started to notice in myself. I started to notice a wobble. And I thought, well, what is that wobble? If you were here last week at the 11 o'clock service, I almost took a header off the stairs, just walking down. They were only stairs, but I lost my balance. By Wednesday, I was running into walls. And I'm like, what's going on? Why am I wobbling? And then with self-awareness and starting to ask myself some questions, I began to recognize how attached I had progressively become to my job. How progressively attached I had begun to self-identify myself as my work. And now I wasn't just the big cheese, I was sharing my cheese. Right? I'm sharing my cheese. So I started to ask myself questions like, am what I contributing, what I am contributing, is that still valuable? And what I'm doing, is what I'm doing still worthwhile? Do other people find value? So you see what direction my arrows are going. I'm like, am I okay? Because out here is different. It's just like the wobble when moms send their kids off to school. If they've been stay-at-home moms, they turn around and they see this empty nest and they say, who am I without my children? It's like when you're in a big, huge career and you've been in it for a very long time and you retire and you say, who am I without my job? Or if you get laid off or fired, all of a sudden you're standing there saying, who am I without that external identity? So it's great self-awareness. Yay, pat myself on the back. I've got great self-awareness. But the self-awareness needs to go deeper. So the self-awareness, under my self-awareness that I'm wobbling, it's like, what is that? What is that? And in looking at it, and I shared this story in the Wednesday night class, it's like, oh, I have a memory of my father dying. 23 years ago, my father made his transition. His body was debilitated by cancer, but every morning my father would get up, get dressed, put on his shoes, and find some kind of work to do. He would find some kind of job to do. Well, his feet got swollen very near the end, and he started getting blisters from the shoes. And then the blisters turned into ulcers, and the doctor told him he couldn't wear shoes anymore. So the next day, my dad got up, he got dressed, he came to the breakfast table, and he announced that he was no longer going to eat. Because if he couldn't wear shoes, it meant he couldn't work. And if he couldn't work, his life was worthless. And he might as well die. It took him 3 weeks. But in my mind, I began to link an over-identification of work with death. So you see how my wobble, going deeper, going deeper, going deeper, I've actually come to what I hope is the heart of my being off balance. And that it's not the outside at all. I have an opportunity now that I have created those notices and those realizations. It's like, here's this bucket and I'm taking things out and I'm taking things out, and all of a sudden I have all this space in the bucket. It's like I can fill myself up. My recovery is to fill myself up so much with my own value, my own light, my own love, that I see more and more and more of my wholeness. In retrospect, yesterday, when I'm constructing the talk, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been practicing what I've been teaching for a very long time, which is this 3-step process: discover, uncover, and recover. It's very clever, these 3 words. And sometimes I even get out my Indiana Jones hat and my maps and my magnifying glasses and my decoders and all kinds of things like that. Because really, when we step into discovery, we're stepping into self-awareness. At its very basic level, self-awareness is looking in the mirror, looking at a photograph and saying, hey, that's me. But self-awareness is also asking the questions: what am I feeling? What am I thinking? What am I judging? What am I discerning? What am I noticing? What is coming up for me? And then the second level, going a little bit deeper, is more to the radical self-awareness that Robert Brummett talks about. It's about getting that bird's eye view. It's about going so deep inside that you have a new perspective. Uncovering is all about going that next layer deeper, going that next layer deeper, going that next layer deeper. Last week I talked about that bird's eye mechanic that we can have, open focus, which is 12 to 18 inches behind and slightly above our head, where we see ourselves in the picture. That's what uncovering is all about. We want to see ourselves in the picture. We want to listen to those internal dialogues that we're having. Dare I do this? Dare I not? What happened the last time I did it? Oh, I'm noticing that every time I go to the beach and don't wear sunscreen and I'm there for 4 hours, I get sunburned. Oh, I'm noticing. Whatever you're noticing or I'm noticing, that's what we're uncovering. This journey is not for sissies. That's why we need the Indiana Jones hat. Dum, da-dum, dum, dum, da-dum. I can stand up straighter. Dum, da-dum, dum, 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 dum. If I can do it, you can do it. If Jesus could do it, we can do it. If Renee can do it, we can do it. If Melissa can do it, we can do it. I mean, we can do it. We have the capacity. We have the capacity. And with all of that uncovering, we come to the core of us. We come to the truth of us. We come to our essence. That strength, that wisdom, that zeal, that power that has lived in us and as us all along. That's where recovery comes in. We are recovering that knowing with the uppercase K. I want to say N, but that's phonetic. I read another book this week. I didn't get to do that, but anyway, Yoga and Judaism. In order to understand that which occurred outside, we must develop and understand that which occurs inside. Our ability to understand the outside world is limited by our understanding of our inner selves. The inner self is the tool through which the outer world becomes known. Ignore the tool, remain the fool, so to speak. It's an invitation. It's an invitation to go within. It's an invitation to become self-aware. The third step is recover. My older son, Mark, is a professional ballet dancer. Some of you know that, but he had this teacher who was very famous. You didn't mess with her. She was very famous and she was very tough. She believed that being a professional dancer was difficult, and therefore she was going to make every class for every student difficult. So they would go to class and she would just put out one grueling routine after another, after another, after another, and eventually she'd kind of snap and she'd go, recover, recover. Now these students really felt like dropping into this pool on the floor and collapsing and trying to catch their breath and feeling sorry for themselves for their sore muscles. But what the successful ones did instead was they recovered, because they are recovering the knowledge with a uppercase K, the knowledge that they had the capacity in them to do more than they thought they could. That's what recovery is all about. It's not returning to stasis. It's not returning to the way we were before we noticed anything. It's about knowing with the uppercase K that we are whole. And even if we can't see all of our wholeness, all of a sudden we're seeing more of our wholeness. More of our wholeness and more of our wholeness, meaning that we are transforming before our very eyes. And I think that's what life is all about. It's not the hokey pokey, but that's what life is all about. Robert Berman says, transformation is paradoxical. It is indeed passing beyond the self as it is, and yet in another sense, it is simply becoming more of what one already is. We can see it as a process of transcendence, moving beyond, yet we can also see it as a deepening, moving into the very nature of our own being and living fully and creatively from that deeper nature. In either way of seeing it, transformation is a movement, a quantum leap into a new way of life, a new way of being. And in order to have that experience, we are required to have intention and commitment. Here's the commitment. I commit to discover, uncover, and recover my wholeness. Would you say that with me, please? I commit to discover, uncover, and recover my wholeness. Let's say it again so we don't forget it. I commit to discover, uncover, and recover my wholeness. Whew. Whew. No more running into walls now. We're getting ready for World Day of Prayer, and in getting ready for World Day of Prayer, we are the ones that create the prayer list that get read on the hour at the top of every hour. So we're taking today and the next 2 Sundays to create our prayer list, and we're going to sing a song about sending our love over the mountains, over the sea, into the heavens, knowing that it returns to us. So as we put the names of the people that we're inviting in consciousness, including ourselves, into self-awareness, into a greater version of themselves, as we write those names down, know that they'll be held in sacred prayer between now and September 13th. The names will be read, and we end up reading hundreds of names every hour, and then we send it to Silent Unity at Unity Village, where they're held in sacred prayer for another 30 days. So we're going to sing, we're going to sit, we're going to write, we're going to sing, and then we're going to pray. Is that any questions?